Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the Bengal Tiger Recruiting Podcast. I am Billy Embody. With me is Shea Dixon. As always, we've got a lot to get to because since we've recorded a podcast last on the recruiting front, LSU has landed another 2024 commitment, landing Parkway High School kicker Aeron Burrell. Shea, this is one of the best kickers in the country, right in Louisiana's backyard. He was on campus last weekend and went ahead and made that commitment to the Tigers. He was also in attendance for the LSU Alabama game. He's been on campus multiple times. But this is a big land solidifying the future of LSU kicking.
A big time. Look, you get an in-state kid committed. That's always big. They passed on a kicker in-state last year. The year prior, they had taken Nathan Dibert out of Michigan. That was when Greg McMahon was still on the staff. So first, not a surprise to see them add a kicker. And it wasn't long after John Jancic was named an on-field role, and he's coaching jack linebackers, but also overseeing special teams, that they went ahead and offered a kicker, offered Burrell, got him to campus with his family this past weekend. He commits. So you make quick work of things there. And by Cole's Academy is one of Billy, the big kicking academies. Obviously, I think there's two of them, really. Chris Saylor and Cole, I guess, would be the two. But for instance, Cade York was a Cole's kid. He's ranked Burrell as the number 2 kicker in this class on Cole's. I could pull up his stats, but I think like one thing that jumped out at me, he had a few multiple 50-yard kicks and was, I think nearly perfect on extra points, but it was something like 56 of his 57 kickoffs for touchbacks. And I think that's key. So nice addition. Now it's done with. You don't have to worry about kicker. And you got a couple guys on campus, Dibert and Damian Ramos, who was the starter last year, battling it out. And then from there, you turn to Burrell.
Yeah, we're actually going to drop an interview with Aeron that I did with him. We'll drop that over this weekend, him going in depth on that decision to play for the Tigers. But he reiterated what you just said. His strengths are, really being able to boot it out of the back of the end zone. His leg strength is something that he's really proud of. And also, he has the ability to kick the ball from 50-plus yards. And really has that strong leg that can kind of change the way you game plan, similar to the way Cade York did when he was at LSU, just that ability to kick it from 50-plus yards, 60-plus, and really take a stab at it. That can kind of change the way you think about things from a field goal perspective. So I like the land. Obviously, it's not going to bring a ton of flash, but when you have a guy like Aeron Burrell in your backyard and you're looking ahead to the future, it was a nice pickup for LSU. So they continue to build on that 2024 class.
Yeah, I'll tell a story here before we move on. I botched this one for us, Billy, for the Bengal Tiger, for the fans, for the listeners. So Saturday he was on a visit for junior day, and they had practice that day. And then Denbrock spoke with the media. So after practice ends, Denbrock is starting, goes to talk, right? And then, so everyone's coming off the practice fields. And then Denbrock gets done, and I was still writing something, so I was the last person to leave the team room before they brought recruits in. And I'm walking out of the team room back to the parking lot, and there were just recruits kind of everywhere. And I saw Frank Wilson, and I can't remember who else, but they were talking to some parents and a kid, and I didn't see the kid. He was on Frank's other side, and he dabbed him up. He's like, "Hey, congrats." And I heard that, but, I'm still walking. They were talking, taking photos. I presumed there were a bunch of kids there. I was like, someone got offered. I was like, if someone committed, there would only be a few guys I'm even on the lookout for. I was like, I'll keep an ear out for it. Well, then he committed 4 hours later. And then I saw him post a family photo. There was the Frank photo that was posted that I was like, oh, that was him committed. That was right after he committed. And I totally just botched even asked, trying to pry with sources of what was happening. So I botched it for us.
Well, look, I mean, you did. We were texting a little bit on Saturday. I was celebrating the birthday, but that was one of the names that sources said, "Hey, check in with him. Check in with him. Things went really well." So lo and behold, very under the radar. When you guys listen to the interview on our YouTube channel, you could see he's very, very calm, very collected, very low key. So he went ahead and just popped.
Yeah. Billy takes one junior day off to try to celebrate his birthday and says, I say, don't worry, I'll handle it. I'll only walk right by the only commitment as it's happening and not even report about it.
Hey, that's all right. I mean, technically we're not supposed to talk to him. I mean,
Well, yes, I broke no rules.
yes,
Compliant. I just kept walking.
we it's very rare that you kind of see it going down, so to speak. And Aeron told me in the interview, he said he knew on Friday, but then he told Brian Kelly after practice on Saturday. But I can only recall, I would have to go back in to the archives to try and figure out anyone else. But we captured the moment that Tavion Galloway committed while he was on campus at camp. He had all the LSU T-shirts, and they all said Galloway on the back. His whole family was there for it. So it's rare when you see it actually go down, but it is fun and kind of cool to see. The tears were flowing from Tavion's mom that day too. So we got some pictures of that.
Well, we're going sideways. As you know, I like to stick to the rundown. This was not on the rundown, but hey, look, that's what makes a good pod. I would say the best stuff like that happens at summer camp, right? Like we have pictures of Harlan Berry talking to Frank Wilson and Brian Kelly for the first time. He looks like a little baby at that, but it was only a year ago. He's grown a ton since then. But
you would think he was like Jalen Coleman.
yeah, he's like the number 2 running back in the country now. And it was just a kid who was, I don't even know if he was working with the main group, and that brought him up and put him in the main group. And Brian Kelly and then whatever. And we have some photos of them talking. We're like, oh, well, who's that kid that Brian Kelly and Frank are talking to? And lo and behold, it was the number 2 running back in the country for next year.
Yep. Never a dull moment around summer camp. Summer camp is the best. That is one of my favorite times of the year, and it'll be here before we know it. One player though that'll be on campus for summer workouts is Caleb Jackson, the LSU signee, or one of 2 LSU signees at the running back position in the 2023 class. Trey Holly's already on campus going through spring, getting a lot of touches right now, but Caleb Jackson missed pretty much all of his senior year with an injury. And when we spoke around signing day, he said, I am focused and locked in on running track this spring and getting that 100 time back to where I want it. And he's a decorated track guy already. But Shea, he's been putting on a show out there, especially in the 100-meter.
Yeah, this is what you want to see. Caleb Jackson and Trey Holly are your only 2 running back additions. And it's a room that really doesn't have a lead back. Like a lot of guys will get carries in the room, and freshmen at running back can often get into that mix, even if it's only a few carries. Jackson, it's like Mason Smith. Mason Smith tore his ACL or, messed up his knee. Jackson fractured his ankle, but I think it was his 4th carry of the season in week 1. So like basically the first series of the game, and boom, fractures his ankle. Was trying to come back in November, couldn't. And then you just hope he wasn't an early enrollee. So you're like, man, just get healthy, show up to LSU healthy in the summer. Well, he's been running track all of March into April. As you noted, some solid 100 times. I think he's got 3 or 4 sub 11 second hundreds, which is very solid for a 215, north of 215 pound, 5'10" running back. But last night, well, we're recording this Thursday, but a little behind the scenes there. Wednesday, he ran a 10.68 at the Brady Perry Invitational. Non-wind dated, that's his best time. He also has a personal best now of a sub 7 second 60 meter, but he's back to what we thought he was, Billy. He's the speed back, the one cut, can get upfield and go running back that you want to have in your room. And when he got injured as a senior, it was a lot of like, man, he was great as a junior. You wish you could have seen him all senior year. He could look like one of the best running backs in the country. I think On3, Charles, everybody else kept him top 200 range. I think he was like a number 12 running back, which is about where he always was. They didn't move off it because, Billy, they saw what you saw. I mean, you've seen him play in person. When he's healthy, he is as good of a running back as there is out there in terms of kind of top 10 guys in a class.
Yeah, I love what Caleb Jackson's going to bring to LSU. I mean, it's never a sure thing. It's a position that, these guys can get banged up. They can, be impacted in ways like that. But Caleb Jackson has that one cut ability that, people really like. He's not necessarily the shiftiest guy, but that top end speed is something that really, really impressed a lot of people as he was going through the recruiting process. And it is a shame that he didn't have that senior year because he could have really catapulted himself up even higher. But it just shows kind of what we thought about him as a prospect for him to not really move. Obviously, an injury like that, you could fall off a little bit as far as your, ability to be explosive, but he's clearly shown that he has that explosiveness. And I think he's kind of a dark horse to factor into this running back rotation as a freshman.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because right now John Emery's focused on academics. Josh Williams is hurt, or at least coming back from injury, and it's only been Noah Cain and Armani Goodwin's hurt, and he's not even coming back till fall camp, is what Kelly said. So you've only got Trey Holly and Noah Cain out there right now. It's not like you've got 4 healthy running backs and they're kind of running away with impressing Frank Wilson. It's kind of, hey, look, we've got 2 guys healthy. All of y'all are going to have to chip in. So yeah, I think that I don't know how big of a role, and certainly injuries can come into play, or whatever with other guys, but I do think Caleb Jackson could play some as a freshman.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes. Obviously, a lot of different options in that running back room for the LSU staff to work through and see how they develop over the summer and of course, in fall camp. But a guy that LSU is all over right now, an unsigned guy, an uncommitted prospect, 2025 running back James Simon was back at LSU for a midweek visit this week, catching practice on Tuesday and being able to get around the coaching staff a little bit more, probably took in the parade potentially. This was a very welcomed visit. He's been on campus now a couple times. He's taken in games. He earned the offer earlier this spring. LSU's putting the full court press on James Simon. I think he's one of the best running backs in his class, and his ranking on On3 reflects that as well. He's a great combination of size and power, and LSU to get him on campus, that was a welcome sign this week.
Yeah, he did. They attended the women's national championship parade, and a lot of in fact, all the staff, Brian Kelly, personnel staffers, all were over there sitting on the floor, and I saw they had a number of recruits with them. So those guys took in that. He also took in practice. I want to note this because I think it just drives home. We've got him as the number 8 running back in the country, Billy. As you said, the only site right now that's got him ranked, but to debut that high shows he's the real deal. We've talked about this 2025 running back class in Louisiana, and it's really deep. Like, I could give you 6 or 7 names of guys who are going to play high-level college football. But at the top right now is James Simon and Harlem Berry. And Berry's ranked as the number 2 running back in the country. He's a Jamal Charles type. If you have never seen this kid plays, speed, shiftiness, cut, ability, all that, he's got it all. He's freaky. What I think separates Simon and makes him unique as well is he's already 6 foot 200, north of 200. And I saw he was at practice and he took a picture with the only running backs that were out there, Noah Cain and Trey Holly. But look, Trey Holly's on the shorter side, so he's taller than Trey Holly. But Noah Cain's a legit 5'10", a little north of 5'10", and he had a couple inches on Noah Cain, and he was thick. So for a high school junior, not to look out of place standing next to a couple, currently college SEC type running backs, he's going to end up being a kid who I think fills out well and just looks the part. So if I'm doing what they're doing right now, I'm all over him. Come in for midweek visits, multiple day stays, whatever it takes. Get him to campus because his recruitment is going to take off.
Yeah, he was also at TCU in Texas recently. He'll make some other visits. I think he's eyeing some Oregon, Texas A&M. And look, he's going into his junior year, so there's a lot of time on this one. But there are a lot of ties to Louisiana with his family. There's a lot of people on staff that he's been in contact with for a while. So I like the foot that LSU is putting forward to get James Simon on board and try to show him just how big of a priority he is. He wasn't the only prospect that LSU's had on campus as of late. They had another round of junior day visitors on campus last weekend. Shea, this is a group that I think really stuck out to me because for the most part, all of them were really high profile targets for them. And when we are trying to kind of watch how this recruiting class could shape up, we look at weekends that, really can kind of set the tone for a class. And I like what this weekend was. It wouldn't shock me if there were some commitments out of this weekend. Obviously, we saw Aeron Burrell jump on board already, but they had some of their commitments like Tavion Galloway, Ahmad Bro, and Kyrie Lee back on campus. But this was a pretty talented group of players that was back in Baton Rouge.
Yes, and as the rundown says, we have to each give our biggest takeaway. I don't want to steal yours if you already have your answer, because this is someone you did write. You wrote the article on him and conversations with him and with others at On3. Jeremy Johnson wrote an article on him as well, leading me to believe that they had a really big weekend with Christopher Jackson. And this is a kid who, coming out of Georgia, 6'4", 225, edge rusher, meaning that, BJ Ojulari position, top 10 on On3, top 10 edge rusher, same number 8 on the On3 industry rankings and on On3, and a top 100 player on On3. When I look at an offer list, Billy, in a lead group that's like Bama, Georgia, Clemson, and then LSU's trying to get in the mix, like, man, that's going to be tough for a kid from Georgia. He spoke so highly of LSU and then added in, I'm not trying to dream school, death nail y'all here for the recruitniks who every time a kid says LSU's his dream school and he's not from Louisiana, he doesn't actually go to LSU. But he talked it up in a way of like, hey, look, from middle school on, I've been all about LSU. And now that I finally got to see it, they have an official visit locked in. I love the staff. I feel great about things. So it went to a point where I thought, okay, they really did make a big impression on him. And this is the type of guy you've got to land in classes to be considered elite and get top 5 recruiting classes beyond just getting Louisiana talent.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you said. And as soon as you started to move toward quote unquote stealing it, and look, you're the one that had him in your prediction piece earlier this month or last month when we dropped them. So you at least had the beat on them starting to really trend up for him. And you're right. He did speak very highly of LSU, and now he's going to be back for an official visit. He hasn't locked in that date just yet, but he said that is one that I know for sure I'm going to take. Now there's Georgia, there's Clemson, there's a bunch of other schools after him. I mean, he's a top 100 prospect on 3, but I think I completely agree with you. This is one of those guys that when the state doesn't give you that elite, high-end pass rusher, you've got to go out in the region and go get one. They've got some work to do with Colin Simmons, the 5-star edge. They've got a lot of edge prospects on their board that they're working on. So LSU's been recruiting Chris Jackson really well from a state that LSU's been recruiting well. So I think that is one of the biggest takeaways from the weekend. I'll go on the defensive line, but more interior. I did speak with Alex January's dad, the Duncanville, Texas defensive lineman, who is a Texas legacy. His dad, Mike, played linebacker for the Longhorns, and Texas does lead the On3 recruiting prediction machine. But Mike January and his wife are both from Lake Charles. His grandparents are all there. A lot of their family is all there. I think that's an underrated aspect of this recruitment. And after the weekend, and this is, mind you, without a defensive line coach in place, he told me that LSU is going to be one of those schools that they take an official visit to. The other, Texas. He's got his Texas visit locked in. LSU's getting some dates together, and they're going to get a visit on the schedule with him. But going into that visit, Mike told me, hey, we're watching how this visit goes with LSU. We obviously have the ties to the area. I like what LSU's done from a perspective of developing defensive linemen through the years and their history overall. If they impress, we're going to be back. And sure enough, LSU did. And he was really, I think, most impressed with the way Brian Kelly has handled not having a defensive line coach, because Alex January was a guy that Jamar Cain was all over. He was really pushing hard there. They had this visit locked in before he ultimately took the job at the Broncos. But for him to still come away that impressed, I think that stood out. I'm not sitting here saying they're going to get him just yet, but they, I think, made a big move in his recruitment to get them in that conversation. And, I think there will be another team that pops in there for an official visit for sure, but that wasn't guaranteed by any means. They've got some other unofficials to take, but LSU now is really, right in the mix with the Longhorns to land them.
It's wild to think right now. You're probably too close to it to really appreciate, consider you're a Dallas guy, but you just said, we know about Colin Simmons being one of LSU's top edge rush targets. You just talked about Alex January. We're about to, in the next coming up segment, answering some mailbag questions, talk about Caden Durham. LSU's offered Dotson Walker.
Yep.
as well.
Safety.
And they lead the on-3 RPM for the 4-star safety. What do they all have in common? They all go to Duncanville. Duncanville has no business losing any football games. If I can just name you 4 guys in one podcast that we're going to talk about with one SEC school.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why they were able to finally get over that hump and win state. I mean, they've got a quarterback in Keelan Russell in 2025 that I think LSU should take a look at too. He's ranked as a 4-star prospect. He can really flick the ball really well. And I mean, the talent at Duncanville just keeps going.
Are they the best team in Texas?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, they're the defending state champs at the highest level, and they just keep finding talent, getting talent. Coach Samples over there does a great job of that. And they're also one of the best staffs to deal with. I'm looking forward to when they ramp up spring ball here in a couple weeks and going down there and getting to spend the day at Duncanville. There's plenty of interviews to go around down there at Duncanville.
Yeah, that's 4 guys LSU's offered, at least, in this class that are all the same age.
More on the way. I think they also have an offer out to 4-star safety in the 2025 class, Tyron Polley, already too. So the pipeline at Duncanville, they're trying to build it. They're trying to get it off the ground, and for good reason. They keep churning out some talent down there. So, Shea, the pipeline that we've got going is Bengal Tiger subscribers jumping all over Rogue Shop. RogueShop.com, promo code Bengal Tiger for 10% off your entire order. Check them out. It is our partner for CBD, Delta 8, all your tinctures, all your pain creams, pre-rolls, gummies. If you have struggles with sleeping, anxiety, and pain in general, look them up. RogueShop.com. Richard and Shar do a tremendous job. And it just seems like every week we're seeing more and more Bengal Tiger subscribers talk about all the quality items that they have from the small craft cannabis store that you can order from wherever and support a veteran-owned business and a small business at that as well.
I've got my story from this week. I think we talked on like Tuesday, maybe it was, but we were both slow getting going. And I was like, I just didn't sleep last night. You're like, oh, neither did I. Like, I was restless all night. And I then Googled, I was like, I usually, oddly enough, I feel like my sleep patterns are odd when it's a full moon. Well, it wasn't a full moon until the next day. It's actually the pink moon on Wednesday. It was very pretty. But I took about a little more than a half, I'd say 3/4 of one of the CBD gummies, lights out all night. Woke up at 6:30 when my alarm went off, felt good, battled through the pink moon, didn't stay up. Dogs were probably restless, didn't even faze me. So I can definitely double down that this week the Rogue Shop came through because I got a very good night of sleep on Wednesday.
Yeah, I did the same last night as well and was able to make up for that restless night on Tuesday night. And so feeling refreshed today. And that is in part thanks to Rogue Shop. They're custom formulated edibles with cannabis, vitamins, and plant materials. It's all done in-house by hand. So it's not a big production. It is a small business owned by veteran and Richard and his wife, Shar. So support RogueShop.com. They've been great partners for us, and we continue to hear good things coming out of Bengal Tiger subscribers as well. So promo code Bengal Tiger. Check them out, RogueShop.com. Shea, we talked about Duncanville, and we're going to go right back to them as we begin our mailbag segment of the podcast.
Yeah. If you missed the mailbag, we actually did the mailbag with Maddie B and I, which will be the episode right before this one, if you're on your stream or Spotify or Apple or whatever you're watching on. But Maddie B lays down a firm rule of no recruiting questions allowed, and every week everyone breaks them with no regard. So this week I just grabbed them and brought them onto the recruiting pod so that we'd have a little more to talk about.
Yeah, sometimes we need that. Break up the monotony of spring. So the first prospect we're going to talk about is Caden Durham out of Duncanville. He's one of the best running backs in the country. And the question comes from Go23, as you see his profile there on the screen if you're watching on YouTube now. Caden Durham has been very active on social media posting about LSU lately. Do you guys have any idea whether he's close to announcing a commitment And what are LSU's odds to land him? And I think Shea and I are kind of split on this one. So you want to go first, Shea?
Well, they're better than that 1.2% odds.
Correct.
I do believe if you're looking at the On3 RPM. Does he have any predictions in on Oklahoma? Is that why that's so heavy? Because he's been to LSU some.
Yes. Our buddy Sam Spiegelman put that one in, that prediction in right around the state championship.
Okay, that looked like I saw December. Okay. What's changed for me since then that would lead me to believe LSU's in a good spot? I would think that first and foremost, they offered him in track. And he has been, let's see, active in track this spring. Gosh, he's a quick kid. Now, we talked about Caleb Jackson. Caleb Jackson's 5'10", north of 215. If you're looking there, he's listed at 5'9", 195, Durham. But he's got 10.49, 10.44, another 10.44 at Texas Relays, which was this past weekend, a week ago, to start out the month of April. So a kid that can absolutely fly. And when LSU offered him in track, and I think that's what Go23 is referencing too, because I went and looked on his social media to see what he was talking about, and it was retweeting pretty much everything that LSU track and field was up to at Texas Relays and different events. So and the LSU's rankings coming in, and then I think he tweeted about LSU women's basketball. So I think that he was already high on LSU, but I think that him having a chance to play football and run track at a really big school, and that one being LSU, is why right now you're seeing a lot of LSU buzz around him.
I think that makes a ton of sense. And he is going to be back at LSU later this month for a visit. So that's going to be an important moment in this recruitment. I'm interested to see what the general buzz is around him as we put that visit in the rearview mirror. He has been back to Oklahoma, which I think is the big competitor for LSU in this one. So that is something to watch. Oklahoma is another school with Emmett Jones as their wide receivers coach now. He's a Dallas legend when it comes to recruiting, and he started as a high school coach in Dallas. So that is where a lot of the buzz is really, I think, from that side of things coming from. But they didn't even have Emmett Jones on the staff before Sam put that prediction in right around the state championship. So I think it's going to be an interesting battle. I think if they can get Caden Durham on board, that would be a terrific land. I love the speed he brings. He's we talked about Harlan Berry kind of being like Jamal Charles. I think Caden Durham has kind of some of those tendencies too, just with his speed and size. And if you can get him on board, that might really push that door open for all the Duncanville kids to really, really, really start to, potentially join that LSU class. LSU hasn't kicked the door in on Duncanville just yet. They've been working it for a while, and now we're going to see with a guy like Caden Durham if they can make that move and start, really getting those kids out of South Dallas.
And Oklahoma does recruit Duncanville well, if I'm not mistaken, right? I mean, it seems you always see Oklahoma at Duncanville recruiting kids. I'm scrolling through Caden Durham's social media, but I don't think any other schools offered him a track scholarship, which I think is obviously notable.
That is big. I mean, if he hasn't reported it, I'll when we talk with him, we go down to Duncanville, we'll kind of see where he's at with other schools and running track. But I agree. I think that's a unique factor in this recruitment that LSU can offer him for sure.
So we'll keep an eye on it. But I do think because 2025 is so stacked in Louisiana, Billy, and we just talked about James Simon and Harlan Berry, and there'll be a number of others, Deshaun Ford. There's a lot of guys in the class in Louisiana alone that are good enough to play at LSU. It makes it feel like this cycle, which is the cycle in between, at 2024, you just signed 2 running backs in Trey Holly and Caleb Jackson. You got this year and the next year, you've got all these Louisiana guys that Frank Wilson can go out there and swing for kind of whoever he feels like may be the best fit. And it seems to me right now, Caden Durham has moved into that top spot. I don't see them like pressing 10 running backs at the moment. It seems like he's talking to a handful of guys, and they'll see where the dominoes fall because they know either way they're going to be good.
Yeah, completely agree with you on that. And we'll see how it falls. He'd be a good one to land. And then, you push all your chips in on 2025 if you don't. Next couple questions comes from Iowa City Tiger. Which non-in-state recruit is the next to pop to commit? Do you see the dominoes starting to fall this spring or summer like last season?
You want me to go first? I'll pick Jelani Watkins. You already know my answer, so I'll just tell the people. I'll look at you. Yeah, Billy wasn't that quick with it. He had it pulled up. Okay, so if you're on YouTube, there's Jelani Watkins. Not very bold of me on the On3 RPM. LSU's got a commanding lead. I think I am one of the picks, actually. So I think that I'm picking him because right now, Billy, most every kid, is that my prediction or no? No predictions. Okay.
No predictions. That's just
a leader.
Yeah, that's the only. He's kept things really low key, so there's not.
He's visited like 4 times
where he's gone.
Yeah. Okay. So that's why I'm picking him. I know from talking to people that he's not only visited a ton, but the visits have gone very well, increasingly well over time. He's a take. Like Hankton would take a commitment from him. And so many of the kids right now are in that process of setting up summer official visits, and they'll talk about it on record. I'm doing these visits in the spring, then I'm taking these officials in the summer. And that's why you always see a big wave of commits right before kids start their senior year. If you're asking me who commits next, I've got to pick a kid who's not talking about any of that. So I'll pick Jelani Watkins, a kid who doesn't say much about anything ever.
I like the pick. If I was picking a receiver, that would be the one as well. So like him, very, 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 very fast prospect out of the Houston area. And LSU's done a really nice job recruiting him as well. So I will go with a state that LSU is recruiting well. I mentioned it earlier in the podcast, and that is in Georgia. And Shea, you actually have the prediction in here. And I haven't made mine yet, but I'm inching closer to making a prediction for Marcus Moskal out of the Atlanta area. Goes to South Gwinnett. He's a high 3-star, could move up a little bit more, in my opinion, as people see more and more of him. But LSU has hosted him for unofficial visits. He's going to take an official. He's made some other trips elsewhere, but the buzz that I've gathered, at least, is that he's a prospect that I think LSU would take, and they're still swinging for the fences at a lot of different spots. If they got Moskal on board, that would give them, and he's a tackle on 3, but I think he might be either more of a right or potentially even an inside guy at the next level. That would give you Kyrie Lee, who's an inside guy, and then Marcus Moskal, who does have some versatility, but I like him on the inside. And then you can kind of keep swinging for the fences with a bunch of these guys that they've had on campus and also have high interest from. So I'm going to go with Marcus Moskal. He's not really talking about it too much. He's one of those guys that I think talks about it, but might not be about it in that sense of doing the whole song and dance with officials. But we'll see. At the very least, I could see him coming back to LSU for a summer official, and maybe that's when it happens. So, but to answer the second question, which was, I think we see kind of a wave of commitments? I think we've seen the wave of, commitments. We saw Kalaj Cobbins, we saw Ahmad Bro, Aeron Burrell. Now, there aren't too many more that I would sit there and say they're going to get him on board here relatively soon. Maybe somebody like a Kobe Young, if everything checked out with him and they were ready. So I think we're going to see that run in July like we saw last recruiting cycle again.
Yeah, I'm on board with you. Obviously, a bulk of the class is going to come from Louisiana, or traditionally does. You mentioned 3 kids right there in a row who committed from Louisiana, and I'm with you. That sort of puts a stop to it for the moment, unless they hand out some new offers. Look, Deshaun McBride, Joel Rogers, those guys got offered. They could well pop this spring, and that gives you more. But right now, the top 4 players in the state on the On3 industry rankings, Dominic McKinley, Trey Green, Wardell Mack, and Tylen Singleton. I don't think any of those guys are committing this week or next week or, whenever it might be. So I'm with you. I think it's maybe you pop a couple more guys in the coming months, but it's going to get heavy in June and then really more so in July.
Yeah, I think so too. And with Louisiana guys, I mean, maybe this isn't necessarily proven by any means, but there's the group that commits early, And then there's the group that, takes it kind of right before that senior year. So like Shelton Sampson, Colin Jackson, guys like that. And I think some of the guys that are up at the top of the state could be ones that we see that from. But you mentioned Deshaun McBride. I'm with you. I think he could be one that pops, on that front. We'll continue to track those guys and see when their decision timeline is. But Shea, we are going to break into the podcast. A little breaking news here. You're all right with that?
I don't know. What was it? Oh, wait. Now I'm looking at my text. Oh, okay. I already knew about this news.
Yes, we did.
Matthew told us before.
Maddie B was all over this one. We're going to take a little break from the mailbag questions. 2024 Lafayette Christian Academy point guard Jada Richard committing to LSU on Thursday now. So this is really their first commitment in the 2024 class. They come off the national championship game. They had Richard on campus multiple times, and they go ahead and get her on board to be the leader of this 2024 class. So LSU dipping in to the Lafayette area for this one, Shea.
Yeah, with Lafayette, I'm gonna guess her last name's Richard.
Yeah, what am I talking?
But I've done this before, and I've been wrong. I called Therold Simone for like 2 years just because he was from Eunice, and then he showed up to campus and was like, "That's not my name."
The breaking news part. I mean, this is the first time I've uttered her name, so we'll have to have her on the
Billy's
podcast.
not deep into the Acadiana junior women's basketball scene. Did you see that 3 straight state titles? Yeah, right there for her. She's at LCA. I think football just won like 4 straight before this year, so they're rolling over there at LCA.
No doubt. So big pickup for Kim Mulkey. That is the breaking news of the podcast that we wanted to share with you guys. So the national championship vibes and run keeps going for them in a big way. Shea, our next question comes from Iowa City Tiger, right? Again. And he asked, there are a ton of wide receivers with high interest in LSU. Which 4 or 5 are you taking?
All right. So we both did our mock 1.0 breakdown on, I just had it open, March 23rd. And you did yours March 22nd. So we are a couple of weeks removed. I'm not sure how much my list has changed. And my list was a kid who's already committed in JoJo Stone, Kobe Young, who you had pulled up right there, which is my only other Louisiana addition at this time. I do think I continue to hear there's some Louisiana receivers out there they might move on. So my list would shuffle if they make an offer to another Louisiana guy. But Jelani Watkins, who I already mentioned in this podcast and picked as my potential next commitment. Bryant Wesco and Draylon Miller. I actually am probably higher on Draylon Miller maybe than Wesco. Wesco is more of a long-term bet that LSU might be able to win out. I think that Draylon Miller is coming off an LSU visit. I would not be surprised if LSU had slightly pulled ahead of Texas A&M. So I'm just going to stick with those. Not moving off it yet.
My list was Kobe Young, Burdell Richardson, who goes to my high school in Tampa, Carrollwood Day, Bryant Wesco, Jelani Watkins, and JoJo Stone. So not too much difference outside of Burdell being in there on mine.
Yeah, and I had Draylon.
And you had Draylon. So I think for me, and this is where it gets tough. Draylon Miller is a classic LSU A&M recruiting battle. And I think LSU has certainly grabbed a good bit of buzz as of late in his recruitment. But the thing with Draylon and what I kind of want to find out more about is, when is he going to have a decision? What's his true timeline? Because if he's one of those kids that maybe is going to kind of be quiet about it and maybe make a decision here relatively soon, then I think that does kind of bode well for LSU. But at the same time, the longer this one drags out, I think it gives A&M just a little bit more time to continue to recruit him and work him, because he's been on their campus, quite honestly, just as much as LSU's, and he'll be back there as well. So that one is a really tough call right now on who could win out.
Didn't LSU offer him in basketball?
They did.
So they're like really pulling out all these side stops to get him. And
yeah, I think the basketball thing for me, like that's cool, but we've talked about it on the podcast before.
Nobody's doing both.
Nobody's doing both and doing it at a high level. So I mean, he might be able to come on a visit and take the pics and do all that with Matt McMahon and his staff, but it just doesn't. If that's what wins out in his recruitment, I'd be surprised.
Same. No, I'm just saying LSU clearly is like, yo, let's pull every stop we can pull.
Yeah, I agree. And another guy they should be doing that for, although I guess he would be a triple jumper, is Bryant Westco. Obviously a top 25 prospect on On3. You can see 24/7 has him up in the top 10. But Charles Power led the way on him, having him on as a 5-star very early on. Now he's one of the best receivers in the country. I would probably, if I had to do another mock class today, I'd probably take him out just because he did come off the visit and I interviewed him and he enjoyed his time. There's no doubt about that. But he, said the two officials he knows he's going to take, and this is right after the LSU visit, were Oklahoma and Clemson. And so for them to not be in that group just right off the bat, I agree with you. It's kind of a long-term play, that you would think maybe LSU can get the official, which I think they will in the end, and then finally make that move for him on the official.
Well, here's my thing. A lot of these top 10 receivers are super talented. I'm not picking him just because he's a Texas kid, and nor did you have him in there. It's because his dad went to Destrehan High. His dad ran track at La Tech. His dad's in the Hall of Fame at La Tech. So the Louisiana ties are there for a kid who's living in Midlothian now. That's why I thought LSU could maybe over time really kind of get in with the family and get in with him. But by no means, I agree with you. I think that they'd be running third at least right now.
Yeah, and look, that's okay. LSU got involved, a little bit late compared to TCU and Oklahoma. TCU seems like they might be fading a little bit though in that regard. But Clemson offensive coordinator Garrett Riley had a little bit of a relationship there with him, and that's why Clemson's kind of been able to make a move in there as well. But Oklahoma still might be tough to beat on that one, but we'll see. I mean, the only thing you can do is keep getting them on campus for visits and hope you secure one of those officials and go from there. I'm trying to think if there's a receiver that I would kind of slide in, considering Bryant Westco would be one I would slide out. I really struggle to find one. The one that would probably have a good bit of buzz right now, but is going to be a really hard recruitment just in general to read would be, and I'm pulling him up right now for those on YouTube, but Arian Hampton. He just transferred to Carthage High School, one of the top programs in the state of Texas. They always win a state championship, it seems like. But he's somebody that is going to be back at LSU again. And I think that LSU is going to hang in there in that recruitment, but he's going to be a hard one to win. But if I had to make a mock class right now, I probably wouldn't have Wesco in it. And instead I would swap in maybe an Arian Hampton.
Has he been committed to 2 schools already?
Yes, or Texas twice.
That's just going to be that's like musical chairs there. It's just last team standing is going to get him.
Yeah. And to give you guys a little bit of a look, here's his upcoming visits. He's got official visits to Texas and Alabama in June. But then next weekend, he's going to UTSA for an official visit. And I will say this, Jeff Traylor is a legendary East Texas high school football coach. I don't think they can win out on that recruitment, but I will say Jeff Traylor is like a god out there in East Texas. So maybe a wild card in that recruitment, which sums that one up pretty well overall.
I'm going to stick with my prediction that a Louisiana player beyond Kobe Young gets an offer and is in the class. I don't know who it'll be, but that's my prediction.
I like it a lot. That's usually a safe bet, so we'll go with that. And finally, we're going to jump into one more question here from Misled Alarm. How many true linebackers, no jacks, do they take in this cycle?
I think the answer's got to be at least 3. They're very short on true middle linebackers. You have Harold Perkins, if you're counting him there. Spates is only here for this year, so you can't count him on any future roster. Greg Penn would be older in his career by the time this whole recruiting class gets to campus. Then you've got the 2 Weeks brothers. So, and then Christian Braithwaite will be getting to campus this summer. So not a lot of guys. Like, you should be carrying more than that. I'll go 3, but then they've already got Xavier Adkins. They've already got 3 committed, actually. If this whole question depends on where you consider, like, do you consider Kalaj Cobbins an edge, or do you consider him a linebacker? I think LSU considers him a linebacker. So with Xavier Adkins, Devon Keys, and Kalaj Cobbins, my prediction of at least 3 is not very bold. They're all committed already.
Yeah, I think so. Devon Keys is your true linebacker in the class, and as is Xavier Atkins. But Xavier Atkins, I'm very intrigued to see what happens with his recruitment, and if he does back off that pledge. He's been back to LSU, but he was also doing that 7-on-7 tournament that same weekend. So that will be one to watch. I'd like to see him get back at some point this spring for a true visit, or get back in the summer. And get back around this program, because that recruitment is just one that is starting to kind of, maybe be one to watch a little bit more on the decommitment front. But we'll see. But Devon Keys they've got on board, and then Kalaj Cobbins is the one that I think he ends up being an edge. I just think his pass rush ability is probably something that LSU covets just a little bit more in that regard as far as his game goes. And I feel like that's where he ends up. I don't know if it's, necessarily the best fit just yet. But I think it's a little bit better than playing a true middle linebacker.
I talked to his head coach, Destrahan. They said they're going to play him more at linebacker this year to try to see what he has, improve his coverage skills. So we'll get a better feel for that as time goes on. Certainly the big name in Louisiana is going to be Tylen Singleton, because he's the highest ranked Louisiana linebacker. He's got an LSU offer. He's been LSU leads the on3 RPM. That's probably a pretty accurate reflection too of, maybe not percentage wise, but of the teams that are kind of in the mix. Tennessee is starting to get a little more in the mix here too, but I don't know. I did put Tylen Singleton in my prediction piece, my mock 1.0. I don't know for sure that he's going to end up at LSU, and they haven't landed a Manny player in some time and actually got him signed. So I don't know. If it's not him, I think it's going to be someone that we aren't even talking about. Like, Braithwaite popped up in the middle of his senior season. So I think it's going to be Singleton, and then you get to like 3 or 4, or you find a guy that sort of pops up over the summer and fall.
Yeah, and look, he was supposed to be on campus this past weekend for junior day, and he shuffled his plans instead, and he went I don't think he went anywhere.
He went to TCU in March, and then I think A&M or Arkansas is this weekend.
It is Arkansas this weekend. He's been to A&M. He's been to Tennessee. That one moved the needle. He's been to TCU. And so he'll be back for the spring game is his plan. So, they're still in it, and they're very much a factor. Like, I think the board's going to go nuts when they hear this part of the podcast. Thankfully, it's the last question. But I think he's maybe a little bit more open than even we kind of realized. I mean, Tylen was kind of considered, or could still be, the anti kind of Tackett Curtis, the guy that's really going to give LSU that shot. And I think he is, but just not swinging down for that junior day and just kind of shuffling the plans. It's kind of like, all right, now it's been a minute since he's been on campus. So I want to see him make the visit on April 22nd, and then LSU start picking up some steam and, bringing him in for an official if they need to in the summer, which they don't usually like to do with the Louisiana guys. But I think he's a really, really good player. So I think he's somebody they've got to land, and especially if, they do end up losing a guy like Xavier Atkins, you've got to go out and land Tylen Singleton.
Yeah, and look, Matt House, the DC and the linebackers coach, has been out to Manny High a ton to see Tylen. Tylen's been to campus a number of times since House has been here. So they're in it. I'm not going to say any Manny player is like 100%, no doubt, like that guy's going to end up at LSU. I don't think that, but I do think this is their best shot in a while of getting one of the guys and getting him committed. So we'll see. If it's not him, by that time we'll have already known about some other linebackers. That's one position right now that I don't doubt they'll do well recruiting at this cycle because they're already off to a good start.
Yeah, I agree. So we'll see. I think 3 to 4 might be a safe bet to answer the question finally.
Yeah, 3 to 4.
Yeah. So with that, guys, that wraps up this edition of the Bengal Tiger Recruiting Podcast. Please keep hitting that subscribe button. We're well over 3,400 subscribers now on the YouTube channel, so appreciate you guys on that. And also, thank you to all of you guys who signed up on our $1 for a month promo deal. We'll keep you guys in the loop if there's another promo coming up. But thank you to you guys who have signed up for thebengaltiger.com. Keep it locked on the Bengal Tiger for all the latest recruiting news. And be sure to stay tuned for next week's edition of the podcast. We'll catch you guys next time. And thanks for listening.